Welcome to Silent Night Archives, a place where the night opens slowly, like an ancient door left half ajar, and where forgotten centuries drift back into the quiet of your room. Carried on a soft wind of memory and shadow, here the past does not shout, it does not demand, it simply breathes, and you breathe with it, letting the weight of time settle gently around you. For almost 800 years, the Iberian Peninsula lived inside a long twilight of shifting borders and changing rulers. A conflict so stretched across time that no single life could ever hold its beginning and its end. History that unfolded not in sudden bursts of violence, but in slow movements like the tide brushing against the shore, retreating, returning, reshaping felon grain by grain, generation by generation, until the people who lived through it no longer thought of it as a war, but as the natural rhythm of their world taunt. You step into that rhythm, not as a warrior, not as a historian, but as a quiet traveler moving through Thetan corridors of a distant age. You walk softly across mountains, where the wind carries the scent of pine and cold stone. You drift through valleys, where rivers whisper against their banks, and you wander into cities that once glowed like lanterns in the night. Cities where the call to prayer rose like a silver thread into the sky, where scholars studied the stars, where poets wrote verses that shimmered like water, and where the lights of Al-Andalus burned bright now, to be remembered even. Now the story of the Reconquista begins long before the word itself existed, long before anyone imagined that the land would be divided for centuries, long before the idea of reclaiming anything had taken shape. It begins in a kingdom already trembling. A Visigothic realm stretcheth in across Iberia, a kingdom where power shifted like sand, where kings rose and fell with unsettling speed, where unity was fragile and trust was scarce, and where the people sensed, even if they could not name it, that something was approaching from beyond the horizon. You stand now in the final days of that kingdom, in the early 8th century, when the air feels heavy, as if holding its breath. The roads are quiet, the fields are wide and golden beneath the sun, and the cities are worn by years of internal struggle. The Visigoths rule, but their rule is brittle, cracked at the edges, weakened by rivalries and disputes over succession. And in the south, across the narrow waters of the Strait of Gibraltar, a new world is rising, vibrant, confident, and filled with a sense of purpose. In North Africa, the Umayyad world stretches like a vast tapestry, woven with threads of faith, trade, scholarship, and ambition. The people there speak of lands beyond the sea, lands where the soil is rich, where the cities are old, and where the rulers are divided, and among them are leaders who see opportunity, not in conquest for conquest's sake, but in the expansion of a world that feels young and full of possibility. A world where knowledge is treasured, where architecture reaches upward like prayer, and where the future seems wide opening. The year 711. Ships cross the strait, cutting through the calm water like silent shadows, carrying Berber soldiers by Tariq ibn Ziyad, a commander whose name will echo through the centuries. Though he himself could never have imagined how far his story would travel, these ships glide toward the Iberian coast, toward a land that sleeps under feet of its own uncertainty. And when they land, the world begins to shift, not with thunder, but with a quiet inevitability. Like the first breath of dawn, you walk with them as they step onto the shore, feeling the cool sand beneath your feet, hearing the distant cry of seabirds circling above. The air is warm, the sky pale and endless, and Felland ahead seems open. Waiting, the soldiers move with calm purpose, not knowing that their arrival will mark the beginning of one of the longest conscious conflicts in human history, not knowing that the land they enter will become a mosaic of cultures, languages, and beliefs, layered over centuries like sediment in a riverbed. The Visigothic forces meet them, but their kingdom is fractured, its unity broken long before the first clash of steel. And the battles that follow are swift, decisive, shaped by the momentum of a world already changing. Within a few years, the old kingdom falls, not with a single dramatic moment, but with a series of quiet collapses, each one wakening the next, until the land opens itself to new rulers, new laws, new rhythms of life. And so Al-Andalus begins, not as a distant dream, but as a living reality, a place where the architecture curves like flowing water, where gardens bloom behind high walls, where scholars gather in libraries filled with manuscripts from across the known world, where music drifts through courtyards lit by lanterns, and where the night sky is studied with a devotion that feels almost sacred. You walk through Córdoba at its height, feeling the warmth of lamps glowing along narrow streets, hearing the soft murmur of conversations in Arabic, Latin, Hebrew, and the many dialects of the peninsula, a harmony of voices woven together by daily life in these early centuries. Al-Andalus becomes one of the brightest centers of learning in the medieval world, a place where medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy flourish, where ideas travel freely, carried by merchants, travelers, and scholars who cross deserts and seas to reach this land of light. And as you wander through its cities, you sense the pulse of a civilization that values knowledge as deeply as faith, a civilization that builds not only fortresses, but libraries, observatories, and schools. Even as the South thrives, the North remains quiet, rugged, and watchful. In the mountains of Asturias, where the air is cool and the forests thick, small Christian communities endure, not as powerful kingdoms, but as clusters of villages bound by tradition and memory. They look southward and see a world transformed, a world that feels distant from their own. And though they do not yet speak of reconquest, they feel festerings of identity, the desire to preserve what remains of their old ways. You stand among them as they gather around fires in the cold evenings, listening to stories of the past, stories of kings and saints, stories of battles long forgotten, stories that remind them of who they are. And though they are few, though their lands are small, they hold tightly to their sense of continuity, their belief that time moves in cycles, that what is lost may one day be regained, not through sudden force, but through patience, endurance, and the slow turning of generations. The contrast between North and South becomes one of the defining features of the peninsula, a contrast not of good and evil, not of light and darkness, but of two different worlds growing side by side, each with its own strengths, its own beauty, its own flaws. The South shines with intellectual brimstone, with poetry and architecture, with trade routes that stretch across continents. The North holds fast to its traditions, its rugged landscapes, its quiet resilience. And between them lies a vast expanse of land that will shift back and forth over the centuries, shaped by countless lives, countless choices, countless moments that slip unnoticed into the flow of time. As you drift through these early centuries, you begin to feel the strange weight of long history, the way it stretches beyond the reach of any single life, the way it moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day the world is different, and no one can say exactly when the change began. The Reconquista is not yet a name, not yet a mission. It is simply the quiet tension between two worlds, each growing, each dreaming, each believing in its own future. You walk through forests where the leaves whisper in the wind, through fields where farmers tend their crops under the warm sun, through markets where merchants trade spices, silk, and stories, through mosques where the faithful bow in prayer, through churches where candles flicker in the dim light, through fortresses perched on cliffs, watching felon below with silent vigilance. And everywhere you go, you feel the presence of time, vast and unhurried, moving like a river beneath the surface of daily life. Agerations rise and fall. Children grow into adults. Adults grow old, and the old pass into memory. Yet the land remains, the mountains remain. The rivers continue their endless journey to Thesia, and the story continues, carried forward by people who do not know they are part of something immense, something that will stretch across nearly 8 centuries, something that will shape the identity of millions long after their own names are forgotten. And as you stand at the threshold of this long unfolding, you feel the quiet truth that history is not made by singlements, but by the slow accumulation of countless small ones, each one a breath, a step, a choice, a whisper in the night. And you understand that Reconquista, in all its complexity, is not a tale of heroes and villains, not a simple struggle between faiths, but a vast tapestry woven by time itself. A tapestry you are now beginning to walk through, thread by thread, night by night. You move now deeper into the early centuries of Al-Andalus, drifting like a quiet shadow through a land that is still settling into its new identity. A land where the old Visigothic structures have not vanished, but have softened, reshaped, absorbed into the rhythm of a new world. The air feels different here, warmer, filled with the scent of citrus groves and the distant hum of life unfolding in ways that feel both ancient and new. In the cities of the south, the transformation is gentle, not a sudden break, but a blending, a merging of traditions, languages, and customs. The people who lived here before remain, their homes unchanged, their fields still tended, their markets still busy, but now they share their streets with newcomers who bring with them new ideas, new architecture, new ways of understanding the world. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the peninsula begins to glow with a different light. You walk through Córdoba in the early years of its rise, long before it becomes the jewel of Europe, yet already you can feel the pulse of something extrendi. The streets are narrow and winding, shaded by overhanging balconies and wooden lattice. The sound of water trickles from hidden fountains, and the air carries the faint fragrance of jasmine, drifting from gardens enclosed behind high walls. The people move with a calm purpose, their voices blending into a soft murmur that echoes gently between the stone walls in the heart of the city. The great mosque begins to take shape. Not yet the vast forest of columns it will one day become, but already a place of quite beauty, its arches rising like the ribs of a great living creature, its courtyard filled with orange trees that sway gently in the breeze. You stand beneath the early arches, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath your fingertips, sensing the devotion and artistry that will continue to shape this place for centuries. A testament to a civilization that values harmony, balance, and the pursuit of knowledge. You wander through the city. You notice how life here is not defined by conflict, but by coexistence. Christians, Jews, and Muslims live side by side, their neighborhoods distinct yet intertwined, their daily rowdiness enveloping in the markets, the workshops, the fields, and the public baths. The sound of church bells mingles with the call to prayer, and the conversations in the streets shift fluidly between languages, creating a tapestry of voices that feels alive and ever-changing. Scholars of Al-Andalus gather in small groups beneath shaded porticos, discussing mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, their words drifting into the warm air like threads of thought weaving through Thessaly. They study ancient Greek texts preserved and translated in the East. They find the works of earlier civilizations. They observe the stars with instruments crafted by skilled hands. And they write treatises that will one day travel far beyond the borders of Iberia, shaping the knowledge of future generations. Sit among them for a moment, listening to their calm voices as they debate the movement of celestial bodies, the nature of light, the structure of human body. Their discussions are not heated, not confrontational, but gentle, curious, driven by a desire to understand the world more deeply. And as you listen, you feel the quiet truth that knowledge itself is a form of peace, a bridge between cultures, a light that softens the edges of conflict. But beyond the cities, beyond the gardens and libraries, the mountains off the north remain rugged and quiet. The Christian communities there live in small settlements scattered across the hills. Their churches built of rough stone, their fields carved from the steep slopes, their lives shaped by the harshness of the land. They hear stories of the south, stories of cities filled with light and learning, stories of rulers who govern with order and stability. And though they do not yet dream of reclaiming the peninsula, they feel thewied of change, pressing against their borders. You walk through the forests of Asturias, where the trees stand tall and ancient, their branches swaying gently in the cool wind. The air here is different from the south, sharper, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The people who live here are resilient, shaped by generations of hardship, their traditions rooted deeply in the land. They gather in wooden halls lit by flickering torches, sharing stories of saints and ancestors, stories that remind them of who they are, stories that keep their identity alive in a world that is shifting around them. In these early years, the North does not see itself as a force or for conquest. It sees itself simply as a people holding on, preserving what remains of their world. They do not march south with armies. They do not dream of vast kingdoms. They simply endure, waiting for time to turn. As time always does, slowly, silently. Inevitably, between north and south, the land stretches wide and varied. Rolling plains, dense forests, rocky cliffs, and fertile valleys, each region shaped by its own rhythms, its own seasons, its own people. And as you drift across this landscape, you feel the subtle tension that lies beneath the surface, not a tension of hatred, but of difference, of two worlds growing in parallel, each unaware of how deeply their destinies will become intertwined. The early governors of Al-Andalus rule with a sense of order, establishing systems of taxation, justice, and administration that bring stability to the region. They build roads, fortifications, and irrigation systems. They encourage trade with North Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. And the peninsula becomes a crossroads of cultures, a place where merchants from distant lands bring spices, textiles, and stories that enrich the lives of those who live here. You walk through the markets of Seville, where the stalls overflow with goods from across the known world. Silk from the east, gold from the Sahara, spices that fill the air with warmth. Exotic scents the merchants call out softly, their voices blending with the rustle of fabrics and the clinking of metalwork. Children weave between the stalls, their laughter rising like birdsong. And the river flows gently nearby, carrying boats laden with goods toward the sea in the countryside. Farmers cultivate the land with new techniques brought from the east. Irrigation channels guide water through the fields, allowing crops to flourish even in dry seasons. Orchards of pomegranates, figs, and olives stretch across the hills, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight, and the land itself seems to breathe more deeply, nourished by the care of those who tended it, even in this time of growth and harmony. The seeds of future conflict are quietly taking root, not through malice, but through the simple passage of time. As generations rise and fall, memories shift, identity strengthening, and the sense of belonging to a particular world becomes more defined. The people of the North begin to see themselves as guardians of an older tradition, while the people of the South see themselves as part of a vibrant, expanding civilization. And though neither side seeks war, the distance between them grows, like two rivers flowing in opposite directions. You drift now into the mid-8th century, when the Umayyad dynasty in the east falls, its power shattered by internal strife, and the Abbasids rise in its place. The shockwaves of this change ripple across the Islamic world, reaching even the distant shores of Iberia, where the governors of Al-Andalus find themselves suddenly cut off from the center of power, uncertain of their future, uncertain of their allegiance. Into this uncertainty steps a young prince, Abd al-Rahman, the last serving member of the Umayyad family. Fleeing the destruction of his dynasty, he crosses deserts and seas, pursued by those who wish to end his line forever. And when he arrives in Iberia, he finds a land ready for new leadership, a land where his lineage still carries weight, a land where he can rebuild what was lost. You walk beside him as he enters Córdoba, the city quiet beneath the soft glow of lanterns, the people watching with cautious curiosity. He carries with him not only the memory of his fallen family, but the vision of a new beginning, and in the years that follow, he will transform Al-Andalus into an emirate, independent from the East, strong, stable, and radiant with culture under his rule. The cities flourish, the arts blossom, the science advance, and the great mosque expands into the breathtaking structure that will one day be admired by the world. You stand beneath its arches, feeling the cool shade envelop you, hearing the soft echo of footsteps on the polished floor, sensing the presence of countless lives that have passed through this place, each one leaving a trace. A whisper, a breath meanwhile. In the north, the small Christian kingdoms begin to grow, slowly, cautiously, shaped by the leadership of figures like Peleo and his successors. They do not yet dream of sweeping across the peninsula, but they begin to push outward, reclaiming small territories, building fortresses, strengthening their identity. Their movements are subtle, like the first stirring soft wind before a distant storm, unnoticed by many, but destined to shape the centuries to come. And as you stand between these two worlds, you feel the vastness of time stretching before you, the slow unfolding of a story that will span nearly 800 years, a story of shifting borders, rising and falling kingdoms, moments of peace and moments of conflict, a story where no single generation will ever see its full arc, where each life is but a brief flicker in the long night of history. You breathe in the quiet of this moment, knowing that the story is only beginning, knowing that the land itself remembers every step, every voice, every dream, and knowing that you will continue to walk through this twilight world, guided by the soft pulse of time as the Reconquista slowly, silently, begins to take shape. You move now into the 9th century, a century where the land of Al-Andalus settles into a deeper rhythm, a century where the brilliance of the south grows brighter, even as the north begins to stir with quiet determination. The peninsula feels like a vast tapestry being woven thread by thread, each region adding its own color, its own texture, its own voice. And you drift through it all like a silent observer carried by the wind of time in Córdoba, the capital of the Umayyad Emirate. Life unfolds with a sense of confidence and refinement. The city has grown into a place of shimmering beauty, its streets lined with workshops where artisans craft delicate metalwork, carved wood, and fine textiles, its markets filled with merchants from Africa, the Mediterranean, and distant lands beyond the horizon. The air hums with the sound of commerce, conversation, and the soft rustle of silk garments brushing against stone pathways. You walk through the expanding Great Mosque, now a forest of columns stretching outward in every direction, each arch rising like a gentle wave, each stone polished by the touch of countless hands. The light filters through latticework in soft patterns, creating shifting shapes on the floor, and the scent of orange blossoms drifts in from the courtyard, mingling with the faint aroma of incense carried by the breeze. The atmosphere is serene, contemplative, a place where the soul feels both grounded and lifted. The scholars of Al-Andalus continue to shape the intellectual world, their writings traveling far beyond the peninsula, influencing thought in North Africa, the Middle East, and eventually Europe itself. They translate ancient Greek works into Arabic, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. They refine mathematical concepts, develop new medical techniques, and map the stars with remarkable precision. Their curiosity seems endless, their dedication unwavering. And you sense that this devotion to learning is one of the pillars that holds the civilization together in the libraries of Córdoba. Shelves stretch from floor to ceiling, filled with manuscripts bound in leather and decorated with intricate patterns. Scribes sit at low tables, copying texts with careful strokes, their quills moving like the wings of quiet birds. The room is filled with a soft rustling sound, the sound of knowledge being preserved, expanded and shared. You seat among them for a moment, feeling the calm focus that fills the space. A reminder that the pursuit of understanding is a gentle, enduring force outside the cities. The countryside thrives under the agricultural innovations introduced by Muslim farmers. Irrigation channels carry water across dry fields, transforming them into fertile expanses of green, new crops as rice, sugarcane, and citrus fruits flourish under the Iberian sun. And the land becomes more productive than it has been in centuries. You walk through orchards where the branches are heavy with fruit, through fields where the wind ripples across the grain like waves on a quiet sea, and you feel the harmony between people and land, a harmony built on knowledge, patience, and care. Even in this flourishing world, the North remains present, distant but persistent. The small Christian kingdoms continue to grow, slowly, cautiously, shaped by the rugged landscapes that surround them. Their leaders strengthen their fortresses, expand their territories, and build alliances that will one day form the foundation of larger realms. But for now, they remain small, their influence limited, their ambitions still forming like clouds on a distant horizon. You travel northward, leaving behind the warm glow of the southern cities, moving into the cool air of the mountains. The forests here are dense, the paths narrow, the villages scattered across the hillsides. The people live simple lives, tending their flocks, cultivating their fields, gathering in stone churches where candlelight flickers against the walls. Their world feels quieter, more isolated, shaped by the harshness of the land and the memory of a kingdom long gone. They hear stories of the South, stories of cities filled with light and learning, stories of rulers who govern with fairness and stability, stories of markets overflowing with goods from distant lands. And though they admire these tales, they also feel a sense of distance, a sense that the world of Al-Andalus is not their world, that their identity lies in the old traditions, the old faith, the old stories passed down through generations in the mid-9th century. Tensions begin to rise within Al-Andalus itself, not from external enemies, but from internal divisions. Some regions feel distant from Córdoba, some leaders seek greater autonomy, and occasional uprisings flare like brief sparks in the night. Yet even in these moments of unrest, the overall stability of the emirate remains strong. The city has continued to flourish, the scholars continue their work, and the cultural conscience to shine with a brilliance that draws admiration from far beyond the peninsula. You walk through Toledo, a city where cultures intertwine in remarkable ways, where Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities live in close proximity, sharing knowledge, traditions, and daily life. The city feels like a crossroads of worlds, a place where ideas flow freely, where languages blend, where the boundaries between cultures soften. You hear the sound of church bells echoing through the streets, followed by the melodic call to prayer. And the harmony of these sounds feels like a reflection of the city itself, diverse, layered, alive in the workshops of Toledo. Artisans craft swords of exceptional quality, their blades renowned across the known world. The metal glows in the firelight as the smiths hammer it into shape, sparks rising like tiny stars, the rhythm of their work steady and precise. A reminder that craftsmanship is its own form of devotion, its own way of shaping the world. As you drift through the 9th century, you begin to sense the slow turning of time, the way generations rise and fall like waves, each one leaving its mark on the land, yet none able to see the full arc of the story unfolding around them. The people of Al-Andalus live their lives unaware that they are part of a conflict that will stretch across centuries, unaware that the borders they know will shift again and again, unaware that their world, so vibrant and full of promise, will one day face challenges they cannot yet imagine in the north. The Christian kingdoms continue their gradual expansion, reclaiming small territories, building new settlements, strengthening their defenses. Their progress is slow, almost imperceptible, like the growth of a tree whose roots deepen year by year. Unseen beneath the soil, they do not yet speak of reconquest. They simply endure, adapt, and wait for opportunities that time will eventually bring you stand on a high ridge overlooking the peninsula, the land stretching out before you in vast, rolling patterns, the mountains rising like ancient guardians, the rivers winding like silver threads, the cities glowing softly in the distance, and you feel the immense scale of the story unfolding beneath you. A story shaped not by single moments, but by the slow, steady movement of time itself. The 9th century ends with Al-Andalus still strong, still radiant, still one of the most advanced and culturally rich regions in the medieval world. Its cities thriving, its scholars respected, its architecture admired, its people living in a world where knowledge, beauty, and faith intertwine in ways that feel timeless. Yet beneath the surface, the first subtle shifts are beginning, shifts that will grow in the centuries to come, shaping the long twilight of the Reconquista. As you drift into the next chapter of this vast story, you carry with you the quiet understanding that history is not a battle between light and darkness, not a simple struggle between opposing sides, but a complex layered tapestry woven by countless lives, each one brief, each one precious, each one part of a story far larger than itself, a story that continues to unfold in the soft, unending rhythm of time. You move now into the 10th century, a century where the peninsula begins to shift once more, slowly, quietly, like a great landscape breathing in and out. The world of Al-Andalus reaches a height of brilliance under the rule of Abd al-Rahman III, who transforms the emirate into a caliphate, a declaration not only of independence from the East, but of confidence, stability, and cultural power. The cities glow brighter than ever, the scholars write with renewed purpose, and the land feels alive with possibility. Córdoba becomes one of the largest cities in the world, its population swelling, its streets bustling with merchants, artisans, scholars, and travelers from distant lands. The great mosque expands again, its arches stretching outward like the branches of a vast and ancient tree. The palace city of Madinat al-Zahra rises outside Córdoba, shimmering with marble, fountains, and gardens. A place built not only for governance, but for beauty. A reflection of a civilization that values refinement and harmony. You walk through the halls of Madinat al-Zahra, the light filtering through carved screens, the sound of water echoing softly from the fountains, the scent of roses drifting through the courtyards, the walls adorned with intricate patterns that seem to shift as you move, the atmosphere serene, elegant, a testament to the vision of a ruler who sought to create a world where art and power could coexist in perfect balance. The scholars of Al-Andalus continue to shape the intellectual landscape, their works traveling across continents, influencing thought in ways they cannot imagine. They study medicine with precision, astronomy with devotion, mathematics with clarity, philosophy with depth, their writings preserved in libraries that hold hundreds of thousands of volumes. a treasure unmatched in much of the medieval world. You sit among them, listening to their calm discussions, feeling the quiet pulse of knowledge that flows through the city, like a river of light yet, even as the south shines with brilliance. The north continues to grow, the Christian kingdoms, though smaller and less advanced in many ways, begin to develop their own forms of organization, their own cultural expressions, their own sense of identity. They build stone churches with thick walls and narrow windows, fortresses perched on cliffs, villages clustered around fields carved from the rugged land. Their world is shaped by hardship, by resilience, by the memory of a kingdom lost centuries earlier. You walk through the kingdom of Leon, where the air is cool and the mountains rise like ancient guardians. The people here live simple lives, tending their flocks, cultivating their fields, gathering in wooden halls where the fire crackles softly, their traditions rooted deeply in the land, their faith a source of comfort and continuity. They hear stories of the South, stories of cities filled with light and learning, stories of rulers who govern with fairness and stability. And though they admire these tales, they also feel a sense of distance, a sense that the world of Al-Andalus is not their world. The Christian kingdoms are not driven by hatred, not driven by a desire to destroy, but by a quiet determination to preserve their identity, their traditions, their sense of belonging. They do not yet dream of sweeping across the peninsula. They simply endure, adapt, and wait for the slow turning of time. Their leaders form alliances, strengthen their armies, and build new settlements. Their progress steady, patient, shaped by the harshness of the land and the resilience of the people in the 10th century. The balance between north and south remains uneven. Al-Andalus stands as a beacon of culture, knowledge, and stability, while the Christian kingdoms remain fragmented, smaller, less developed, yet determined, their identity forged in the mountains, their strength drawn from endurance rather than expansion. You stand between these two worlds, feeling the contrast not as conflict, but as difference, two ways of living, two ways of understanding the world, each shaped by its own history, its own landscape, its own dreams. As the century unfolds, the Caliphate of Córdoba reaches its peak, its influence stretching across the Mediterranean, its scholars respected, its architecture admired, its cities thriving. The people live in a world where knowledge is valued, where beauty is cultivated, where faith is expressed through art, poetry, and the quiet devotion of daily life. You walk through the markets, hearing the soft murmur of voices, the rustle of fabrics, the clinking of metalwork, the scent of spices drifting through the air, the atmosphere warm, vibrant, alive yet beneath the surface. Subtle tensions begin to form, not from external enemies, but from within. The Caliphate is vast, diverse, complex, and the balance that holds it together is delicate. Regional leaders seek greater autonomy, rival factions whisper in the shadows, and the unity that once seemed unshakable begins to tremble, not with sudden violence, but with the slow, quiet shifting of loyalties, the kind of change that moves like a shadow across the land, unnoticed at first, but growing with time in the north. The Christian kingdoms begin to sense these shifts. They watch the south with cautious eyes, aware that the brilliance of Al-Andalus is not eternal, aware that even the strongest civilizations can falter. They strengthen their borders, build new fortresses, expand their territories. Their movements still small, still cautious, but more confident than before. The first hints of a long future struggle beginning to take shape, not through aggression, but through opportunity. You drift through the mountains of Navarra, where the wind whistles through the narrow passes, where the villages cling to the hillsides like small clusters of light. The people here are hardy, shaped by the ruggedness of the land, their traditions old, their faith steady. They hear stories of the Caliphate's splendor, but they also hear whispers of unrest. And they begin to imagine a future where the balance of power might shift. Slowly, quietly, inevitably in the south, life continues with its usual rhythm. The scholars write, the artisans craft, the farmers tend their fields, the call to prayer rises into the sky. The cities glow with the warmth of lamps and lanterns. Yet the leaders feel the subtle tremors beneath the surface. The sense that the unity of the caliphate is beginning to fray. The sense that the future may hold challenges they cannot yet see. Challenges that will test the strength of their world. You walk through the palace of Madinat al-Zahra at dusk, the sky glowing with soft shades of gold and rose, the fountains reflecting the fading light, the air warm and still. The beauty of the place almost overwhelming, yet beneath the serenity, you feel the quiet truth that even the most radiant civilizations are vulnerable to the slow turning of time, that nothing remains unchanged forever, that every golden age carries within it the seeds of its own transformation. As the 10th century draws to a close, the caliphate begins to fracture. Regional leaders assert their independence, rival factions clash, and the unity that once held Al-Andalus together dissolves into a mosaic of smaller kingdoms known as the taifas, each one ruled by its own leader, each one striving to preserve the brilliance of the past while navigating the uncertainties of the future. The land becomes a patchwork of cultures, languages, and ambitions, still vibrant, still beautiful. But no longer unified in the north, the Christian kingdoms see this fragmentation as an opportunity. They begin to push southward, reclaiming small territories, forming alliances, strengthening their armies. Their movements still slow, still cautious, but more deliberate than before, the first true steps of what will one day be called the Reconquista. Though the people of the time do not yet use that word, do not yet see themselves as part of a centuries-long struggle, they simply move with the rhythm of their world, responding to the changes around them, and as you stand at the threshold of the 11th century, you feel the vastness of the story unfolding before you. The slow, quiet turning of time, the way civilizations rise and fall, the way identities form and shift, the way people live their lives unaware of the grand arc of history, unaware that they are part of something immense, something that will shape the world for centuries to come. You breathe in the night air, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future, knowing that the story is far from over, knowing that the land itself remembers every step, every voice, every dream, and knowing that you will continue to walk through this twilight world, guided by the soft pulse of time, as the Reconquista slowly, silently moves into its next chapter. You move now into the 11th century, a century where the peninsula begins to shift more noticeably, where the long balance between north and south trembles, not with sudden violence, but with the slow, steady movement of time. The Caliphate of Córdoba, once the shining heart of Al-Andalus, has fractured into the taifas, small independent kingdoms, each one ruled by its own leader, each one striving to preserve the brilliance of the past while navigating the uncertainties of the present. The unity that once held the land together has dissolved, leaving behind a mosaic of cultures, ambitions, and fragile alliances. You drift through these taifas, moving from one city to another, each one unique, each one carrying its own rhythm, its own light, its own dreams. In Seville, the river glimmers beneath the warm sun. The markets overflow with goods from distant lands. The sound of music drifts through the narrow streets. The people move with a sense of confidence, their city strong, prosperous, alive. In Zaragoza, the architecture rises with elegant curves. The scholars gather in quiet courtyards, their discussions soft and thoughtful. The air filled with the scent of herbs and ink. In Valencia, the orchards stretch across the land like a green sea, the irrigation channels carrying water with gentle precision. The fields thriving under the care of skilled farmers. Each taifa is a world unto itself, vibrant, cultured, and determined to survive. Yet each one is also vulnerable, for the strength of the caliphate has been replaced by the fragility of division, and the Christian kingdoms of the north, once small and scattered, now see opportunities in the shifting landscape. Their leaders watch the south with cautious eyes, aware that the brilliance of Al-Andalus remains, but aware also that its unity has faded, and that time may be turning in their favor. You travel northward into the kingdom of Leon, where the air is cool and the mountains rise like ancient guardians. The people here live with a sense of endurance, shaped by centuries of hardship. Their villages built of stone, their churches small but sturdy, their traditions rooted deeply in the land. They hear stories of the taifas, stories of wealth, beauty, and learning, stories of rulers who govern with refinement and grace. And though they admire these tales, they also feel a sense of distance, a sense that the world of the south is not their world, that their identity lies in the ruggedness of the mountains, the resilience of their ancestors, the memory of a kingdom lost long ago in Castile. The landscape stretches wide and open, the wind sweeping across the plains, the fortresses rising like silent sentinels. The people here are shaped by the vastness of the land, their lives marked by simplicity, endurance, and a quiet determination. They do not possess the wealth or sophistication of the taifas, but they possess a strength born of necessity, a strength that grows slowly, steadily. Like the roots of an ancient tree, you walk through the halls of a Castilian fortress. The stone walls cool beneath your fingertips, the torches flickering softly, the air filled with the scent of smoke and wool. The soldiers train in the courtyard, their movements deliberate, their armor worn but functional, their faces marked by the harshness of the land. They speak of the South with a mixture of awe and caution, aware of its brilliance, aware of its power, yet aware also that the taifas are no longer united, that the balance of the peninsula is shifting in the 11th century. The Christian kingdoms begin to push southward more deliberately, not with overwhelming force, but with careful steps, reclaiming small territories, building new settlements, forming alliances with some taifas while fighting others. The taifas, though culturally advanced, often find themselves competing with one another, their rivalries weakening their ability to resist the growing strength of the north. Some taifa rulers even pay tribute to Christian kings, seeking protection against their Muslim rivals, a decision born not of weakness, but of political necessity, a reminder that history is shaped not by simple lines, but by complex choices. You drift through Toledo, a city that has long been a center of learning, a place where Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities live side by side, their traditions intertwined, their knowledge shared. The city feels like a bridge between worlds, a place where the boundaries between cultures soften, where ideas flow freely, where the past and present blend in quiet harmony. Yet even here, the shifting tides of the century are felt. The city stands at a crossroads, its future uncertain, its identity fragile. In 1085, Toledo falls to Alfonso VI of Castile, a moment that marks a turning point in the long story of the peninsula. The city does not fall with fire and destruction, but with negotiation, transition, and the quiet acceptance of a new ruler. The Christian king promises to protect the rights of the Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, and for a time, the city remains a place of coexistence. Its libraries preserved, its scholars respected, its culture still vibrant, yet the shift is undeniable. The balance between north and south has changed, and the Christian kingdoms feel the momentum turning in their favor. You walk through Toledo after its transition, the streets still filled with the scent of spices, the sound of merchants calling softly, the glow of lamps illuminating the narrow alleys. The people move with a mixture of caution and hope, uncertain of what the future will bring, yet aware that their city remains a place of knowledge, a place where cultures meet, a place where the past is not erased, but carried forward in new ways in the south. The Taifas feel the pressure of the growing Christian kingdoms, their leaders aware that their divisions weaken them, aware that the brilliance of their culture cannot alone protect them from the shifting tides of power. Some rulers turn to North Africa for support, calling upon the Almoravids, a powerful Berber dynasty known for their discipline, their devotion, and their strong sense of unity. The Almoravids cross the sea, their arrival marked not by chaos, but by order, their presence bringing stability to the Taifas, their leadership restoring a sense of cohesion. You stand on the shores of Algeciras as the Almoravid ships arrive, the sails billowing in the wind, the soldiers stepping onto the sand with calm purpose, the air filled with the scent of salt and the distant cry of seabirds. The people watch with a mixture of relief and uncertainty, aware that these newcomers bring strength, but aware also that they bring change. The Almoravids move through the Taifas with steady discipline, uniting the fractured kingdoms, restoring order, and pushing back against the Christian advances. Under their leadership, the South regains its footing, the cities continue to flourish, the scholars continue their work, the culture remains vibrant, yet the world has changed. The peninsula is no longer divided simply between a strong south and a small north. It is now a land of shifting alliances, rising powers, and complex identities. The story of the Reconquista is no longer a distant possibility, but a quiet reality unfolding step by step, shaped by the choices of rulers, the resilience of people, and the slow turning of time. You drift through the 11th century, feeling the weight of history pressing gently against your skin, the sense that the land itself is holding its breath, waiting for the next movement, the next shift, the next chapter. The people of the time do not see themselves as part of a centuries-long struggle. They simply live their lives, unaware of the vast arc of history that stretches beyond their sight, unaware that their choices, their fears, their hopes will shape the world for generations to come. And as you stand at the threshold of the 12th century, you feel the quiet truth that history is not a story of heroes and villains, not a simple struggle between faiths, but a vast, intricate tapestry woven by countless lives, each one brief, each one precious, each one part of a story far larger than itself, a story that continues to unfold in the soft, unending rhythm of time. You move now into the 12th century, a century where the peninsula enters a deeper twilight, a century where the long balance between north and south begins to shift more dramatically, not with sudden storms, but with the slow, steady pressure of time. The Almoravids have brought unity back to Al-Andalus, their discipline and devotion restoring order to the fractured Taifas. Yet even as they stabilize the land, new challenges rise on the horizon, challenges that will reshape the destiny of the peninsula once more. You drift through the cities of the south, feeling the pulse of life beneath your feet. Seville glows with the warmth of its river, its markets filled with the scent of spices and the sound of merchants calling softly. Córdoba remains a center of learning, its libraries still rich with manuscripts, its scholars still devoted to the pursuit of knowledge. Granada rises in the mountains like a hidden jewel, its streets winding upward toward the Alhambra's earliest foundations, the air filled with the scent of pines and the distant murmur of water flowing through narrow channels. The Almoravids rule with a sense of order, their presence firm but not harsh, their devotion shaping their governance, their unity strengthening the land. Yet they are outsiders to many in Al-Andalus, their customs more austere, their worldview shaped by the deserts of North Africa. And though they bring stability, they also bring change, a change that some welcome and others resist. The people of Al-Andalus, With their long tradition of intellectual openness and cultural blending, sometimes feel the weight of this new order. Yet they continue to live, to learn, to create. Their spirit resilient, their culture enduring in the north. The Christian kingdoms grow stronger, their leaders more confident, their armies more organized. The fall of Toledo has given them a foothold deep in the heart of the peninsula, a foothold that changes the balance of power. They build new fortresses, expand their borders, and form alliances that strengthen their position, their identity shaped not only by faith, but by the memory of centuries of endurance, the memory of a world lost long ago, the memory of a kingdom they believe they can rebuild to. Walk through the kingdom of Aragon, where the mountains rise sharply against the sky, the villages nestled in the valleys like small clusters of light. The people here are shaped by the ruggedness of the land, their lives marked by resilience. Their traditions old, their faith steady. They hear stories of the Almoravids, stories of their discipline, their devotion, their strength. And though they respect these tales, they also feel a sense of opportunity, a sense that the shifting tides of the century may allow them to push further south in Castile. The plains stretch wide and open, the wind sweeping across the land like a restless spirit, the fortresses rising like islands of stone. The people here live with a sense of determination, their identity forged in the vastness of the land, their ambitions growing as their strength increases. They do not possess the cultural brilliance of Al-Andalus, but they possess a quiet, steady resolve, a resolve that grows stronger with each passing generation. The 12th century becomes a century of movement, a century where the borders shift like shadows, where alliances form and dissolve, where the land becomes a chessboard of kingdoms, each one striving to survive, to grow, to shape its own destiny. The Almoravids hold the south, but their unity begins to weaken, their authority challenged by internal tensions, their devotion questioned by some, their leadership strained by the vastness of the land they must govern. You drift through the streets of Córdoba. Sensing the subtle changes in the air, the scholars still gather in the courtyards, their discussions calm and thoughtful, yet their world feels more fragile. The libraries still hold their treasures, yet the future feels uncertain. The people continue their daily lives, yet they sense the shifting tides, the quiet tremors beneath the surface, the feeling that the stability they have known may not endure forever. In the mid-12th century, a new force rises in North Africa, the Almohads, a movement born of reform, devotion, and a desire to purify and strengthen the faith. Their leaders speak with conviction, their followers move with purpose. Their influence grows rapidly, and soon they cross the sea, entering Al-Andalus with the same determination that once brought the Almoravids. The Almohads bring unity once more, their rule firm, their vision clear, their presence reshaping the land. You stand on the shores of Tarifa as the Almohad ships arrive, the sails billowing in the wind, the soldiers stepping onto the sand with calm precision, the air filled with the scent of salt and the distant cry of seabirds. The people watch with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, aware that these newcomers bring strength, but aware also that they bring change. The Almohads move through the cities with steady discipline, restoring order, strengthening defenses, and renewing the sense of unity that had begun to fade under their rule. The cities of Al-Andalus flourish once more. Seville becomes their capital, its streets alive with activity, its architecture rising with new grandeur. The Giralda Tower begins to take shape, its design elegant, its presence commanding. A symbol of the Almohad vision, the scholars continue their work. The artisans continue their craft. The farmers continue to tend the land. The culture remains vibrant, resilient, enduring yet, even as the South regains its strength. The North continues to grow. The Christian kingdoms form alliances, strengthen their armies, and push further into the peninsula. their leaders driven not by hatred, but by ambition, by identity, by the belief that they are reclaiming a world that once belonged to their ancestors. Their movements steady, deliberate, shaped by the slow turning of time. You walk through the kingdom of Portugal, newly emerging as its own realm. Its coastline rugged, its people shaped by the sea, their identity forming with each passing year. Their leaders ambitious, their armies growing, their gaze turning southward, toward the lands of Al-Andalus, toward the fertile fields, the thriving cities, the warm rivers that flow through the heart of the peninsula. The 12th century becomes a century of contrasts, a century where the brilliance of Al-Andalus shines once more under the Almohads, yet a century where the Christian kingdoms grow stronger than ever before. The land becomes a place of shifting borders, of quiet tensions, of moments of peace and moments of conflict. The people live their lives unaware of the vast arc of history unfolding around them, unaware that they are part of a story that will stretch across centuries, unaware that their choices, their fears, their hopes will shape the world for generations to come. You drift through the countryside, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, hearing the soft rustle of the wind through the fields, seeing the distant mountains rising like ancient guardians. The land itself feels timeless, indifferent to the struggles of kingdoms, indifferent to the ambitions of rulers, indifferent to the shifting borders drawn by human hands. The land endures, the rivers flow, the mountains stand. The story continues in the late 12th century. The Christian kingdoms unite in a rare moment of cooperation, forming a coalition to push southward, their armies gathering, their leaders determined, their resolve strong. The Almohads respond with equal determination, their forces disciplined, their vision clear. The two worlds meet on the plains of Al-Andalus in 1195, the battle fierce, the outcome decisive. The Almohads victorious, their strength reaffirmed, their unity preserved. You stand on the quiet plains after the battle, the wind moving gently across the grass, the sky wide and pale, the land silent, the moment heavy with the weight of history. The Almohads have proven their strength. The Christian kingdoms retreat, their ambitions checked, their momentum slowed. Yet the story is far from over. The tides of time continue to turn, slowly, silently. Inevitably, as the 12th century draws to a close, the peninsula stands at a crossroads. The south strong under the Almohads, the north determined and growing. The land divided not by hatred, but by identity, by history, by the slow unfolding of a story that no single life can fully comprehend. You breathe in the night air, feeling the vastness of the past and the uncertainty of the future, knowing that the story will continue, knowing that the land remembers every step, every voice, every dream, and you walk forward, guided by the soft pulse of time, into the next chapter of the long twilight of the Reconquista. You move now into the 13th century, a century where the peninsula enters a deeper and more dramatic turning, a century where the long twilight of the Reconquista begins to shift toward a new dawn. Though no one living at the time can see it clearly, no one can sense the full arc of the story. No one can imagine how the land will look centuries later. They simply live within the slow, unending rhythm of time, unaware that their footsteps echo across generations. The Almohad Empire, once strong and unified, begins to weaken under the weight of its vast territories, its internal tensions, and a natural turning of history. The unity they brought to Al-Andalus starts to fray, not with sudden collapse, but with the quiet unraveling that comes when distant regions grow restless, when leaders disagree, when the world shifts beneath their feet. The brilliance of their cities remains, the devotion of their scholars endures, yet the political foundation begins to tremble. You drift through Seville, the capital of the Almohads in Iberia, a city still vibrant, still filled with the scent of orange blossoms and the sound of water flowing through narrow channels. The Giralda Tower rises above the rooftops, its elegant form catching the sunlight, its presence a symbol of the Almohad vision. The markets remain lively, the artisans continue their craft. The scholars gather in quiet courtyards, yet beneath the surface, you sense a subtle tension, a quiet uncertainty, a feeling that the world is changing in the north. The Christian kingdoms grow stronger than ever before, their leaders more confident, their armies more organized, their alliances more stable. The victory at Al-Andalus had once slowed their advance, but time has turned again. And now they gather their strength with renewed determination. Castile, Aragon, and Navarre form a rare unity. Their leaders aware that the moment is shifting, aware that the weakening of the Almohads offers an opportunity that may not come again. You walk through the halls of the Castilian court, the stone walls lit by torches, the air filled with the scent of wax and wool. The nobles speak in low voices, their discussions focused, their ambitions clear. They do not speak of hatred. They speak of destiny, of identity, of reclaiming lands they believe were once theirs. Their worldview shaped by centuries of endurance, centuries of living in the shadow of the powerful south, centuries of waiting for the slow turning of time. In 1212, the armies of the Christian kingdoms gather for a decisive campaign, their banners rising like waves of color against the sky, their soldiers marching with steady determination, their leaders aware that this moment may shape the future of the peninsula. The Almohads gather their own forces, disciplined, devoted, determined to defend the land they have governed for decades. The two worlds meet on the plains of Las Navas de Tolosa, a place where the wind moves gently across the grass, where the sky stretches wide and pale, where the land itself seems to hold its breath. You stand on the quiet hills overlooking the battlefield, the air heavy with anticipation, the armies facing one another in the soft morning light, the moment suspended in time, the outcome uncertain, the future unwritten. The battle that follows is fierce, the clash of two worlds shaped by centuries of history, centuries of belief, centuries of identity. And when the dust settles, the Christian kingdoms emerge victorious, their momentum renewed, their confidence strengthened. Their path southward opened the Almohads' retreat, their unity fractured, their influence waning, their empire strained by internal divisions and external pressures. The cities of Al-Andalus remain vibrant, their culture enduring, their people resilient. Yet the political foundation that once held them together begins to crumble. The taifas re-emerge, smaller, fragmented, vulnerable, each one striving to preserve its identity, its culture, its way of life. In a world that is shifting rapidly, you drift through Córdoba, once the heart of the caliphate, now a city facing uncertainty. The great mosque still stands in all its beauty, its arches rising like a forest of stone, its courtyard filled with the scent of orange blossoms, its halls echoing with the soft footsteps of those who come to pray. Yet the city feels quieter, more fragile, its political power diminished, its future uncertain. The people continue their daily lives, unaware that their city, once the center of the world, is entering its final centuries of Muslim rule in the north. The Christian kingdoms push southward with increasing momentum, their armies capturing cities one by one, their leaders driven by ambition, by identity, by the belief that they are fulfilling a destiny shaped by centuries of endurance. They take Pisa, Ubeda, and eventually Córdoba itself in 1236. The city falls not with destruction, but with transition. The great mosque is preserved, its beauty recognized even by those who do not share its faith, its arches left standing, its structure respected. Though its purpose slowly shifts, you walk through Córdoba after its transition, the streets still warm with sunlight, the scent of jasmine drifting through the air, the people moving with a mixture of caution and hope, The city remains beautiful. Its culture still alive, its spirit still present. Yet the shift is undeniable. The balance of the peninsula has changed. The Christian kingdoms now hold the heart of Al-Andalus, and the remaining Muslim territories retreat southward. Toward the mountains of Granada becomes the final refuge of Muslim rule in Iberia. A kingdom small in size, but immense in beauty. Its capital rising like a dream above the valley. The Alhambra growing into a palace of breathtaking elegance. Its walls adorned with intricate patterns. Its courtyards filled with the sound of water flowing through marble channels. Its gardens blooming with roses, pomegranates, and cypress trees. The air filled with the scent of pine and the distant hum of life unfolding in quiet harmony. Walk through the early halls of the Alhambra, the light filtering through carved screens, the walls shimmering with geometric designs, the fountains reflecting the sky, the atmosphere serene, contemplative. A place where art and architecture blend into something almost otherworldly. The Nasrid dynasty, rulers of Granada, devote themselves to preserving the brilliance of Al-Andalus. Their culture refined, their scholarship respected, their architecture unmatched, their spirit resilient in the north. The Christian kingdoms continue their expansion, yet they also face their own challenges. Internal disputes, rivalries between rulers, conflicts over succession. The land is not unified, not harmonious, not free of struggle. The Christian world is as complex and divided as the Muslim world, each kingdom pursuing its own ambitions, its own identity, its own vision of the future. The Reconquista is not a single movement, not a unified mission, but a long, fragmented process shaped by countless decisions, countless alliances, countless moments of opportunity. You drift through the kingdom of Aragon, where the Mediterranean breeze carries the scent of salt and citrus. The people here are shaped by the sea, their ships traveling across the waves, their merchants trading with distant lands, their culture influenced by the world beyond the peninsula, their ambitions extending not only southward, but eastward, toward the islands and coasts of the Mediterranean, their identity shaped by both land and sea in Castile. The plains stretch wide and open, the wind sweeping across the fields, the fortresses rising like islands of stone. The people here live with a sense of determination, their identity forged in the vastness of the land, their ambitions growing as their strength increases, their leaders aware that the future of the peninsula is slowly turning in their favor, aware that the long twilight of the Reconquista is entering a new phase. Yet even as the Christian kingdoms grow stronger, Granada endures, its culture flourishing, its architecture reaching new heights, its scholars continuing their work, its people living with a sense of beauty, refinement, and quiet resilience. The kingdom becomes a beacon of art, poetry, and knowledge, a final flowering of Al-Andalus, a reminder that even in the face of political decline, culture can shine with extraordinary brilliancy. You walk through the gardens of the Generalife, the water flowing gently through narrow channels, the cypress trees swaying in the breeze, the scent of roses drifting through the air, the mountains rising in the distance like ancient guardians, the atmosphere peaceful, timeless, a place where the soul feels both grounded and lifted, a place where the beauty of Al-Andalus endures, despite the shifting tides of history. The 13th century draws to a close. The peninsula stands in a new balance. The Christian kingdoms hold most of the land, their power growing, their ambitions expanding. Yet Granada remains, small but radiant, fragile but enduring, a final refuge of a civilization that has shaped the world with its knowledge, its art, its architecture, its spirit. The story is far from over. The twilight continues. The land remembers every step, every voice, every dream, and you walk forward, guided by the soft pulse of time, into the next chapter of this long, Drifting history, where the shadows deepen, the lights flicker, and the story of the Reconquista moves slowly toward its final centuries. You move now into the 14th century, a century where the peninsula settles into a strange and delicate balance. A balance that feels almost impossible. A balance held together by fragile threads of diplomacy, culture, and necessity. The Christian kingdoms dominate most of Iberia, their banners rising over vast stretches of land, their cities growing, their armies strong. Yet in the far south, nestled between mountains and sky, the kingdom of Granada endures. Small but radiant, fragile but resilient. A final refuge of Al-Andalus, a final echo of a world that once stretched across the entire peninsula. You drift through the valleys leading toward Granada, the air warm and fragrant, the mountains rising like ancient guardians, their peaks dusted with snow even in the heat of summer, the rivers flowing with a soft, steady murmur, the land fertile and green, the orchards heavy with fruit, the terraces carved into the hillsides like steps leading toward the sky, the atmosphere serene, timeless, a place where the world feels suspended between earth and heaven. Granada itself rises like a dream above the valley, its whitewashed houses clinging to the hillsides, its narrow streets winding upward toward the Alhambra, the palace glowing in the sunlight, its walls shimmering with shades of gold and rose, its towers standing tall against the sky. The city feels alive, vibrant, filled with the sound of water flowing through channels, the scent of jasmine drifting through the air, the soft murmur of voices echoing through the streets. A place where beauty and resilience intertwine. The Nasrid dynasty rules Granada with a mixture of diplomacy, artistry, and quiet determination. Their kingdom small, their resources limited, yet their culture flourishing, their architecture reaching new heights of elegance, their scholars continuing their work, their poets writing verses that shimmer like water, their artisans crafting intricate patterns that seem to breathe with life. The Alhambra becomes the heart of this world, a palace of breathtaking beauty, a testament to the enduring spirit of Al-Andalus. You walk through the court of the lions, the marble floor cool beneath your feet, the sound of water flowing from the fountain at the center, the slender columns rising like a forest of stone, the arches adorned with delicate carvings that seem to dissolve into light, the atmosphere serene, contemplative, a place where time feels softened, where the world outside seems distant, where the soul feels both grounded and lifted. The beauty of the place almost overwhelming, a reminder that even in the face of political decline, culture can reach extraordinary heights in the north. The Christian kingdoms continue to grow, their cities expanding, their trade routes widening, their influence stretching across the peninsula. Yet they too face challenges, internal conflicts, disputes over succession, rivalries between rulers. The land is not unified, not harmonious, not free of struggle. The Christian world is as complex and divided as the Muslim world, each kingdom pursuing its own ambitions, its own identity, its own vision of the future. You drift through the kingdom of Castile, where the plains stretch wide and open, the wind sweeping across the fields, the fortresses rising like islands of stone. The people here live with a sense of determination, their identity forged in the vastness of the land, their ambitions growing as their strength increases, their rulers aware that Granada remains the final piece of the peninsula, not under their control, aware that the long twilight of the Reconquista is slowly approaching its final chapters, yet aware also that Granada is not easily taken, its mountains steep, its defenses strong, its diplomacy skillful in Aragon. The Mediterranean breeze carries the scent of salt and citrus, the people shaped by the sea, their ships traveling across the waves, their merchants trading with distant lands, their culture influenced by the world beyond Iberia, their ambitions extending not only southward, but eastward, toward the islands and coasts of the Mediterranean, their identity shaped by both land and sea. Their rulers aware that the fate of Granada will shape the future of the peninsula, yet also aware that their own interests lie in many directions. The 14th century becomes a century of diplomacy, a century where Granada survives not through military might, but through careful negotiation, strategic alliances, and the payment of tribute to the Christian kingdoms, a practice born not of humiliation, but of necessity, a way to preserve their independence, their culture, their way of life. The Nasrid rulers navigate the shifting politics of the peninsula with remarkable skill, balancing the demands of their powerful neighbors with the needs of their own people, maintaining peace where war would mean destruction. You walk through the halls of the Alhambra at dusk, the sky glowing with soft shades of gold and violet, the fountains reflecting the fading light, the air warm and still, the beauty of the place almost unreal. Yet beneath the serenity, you sense the quiet tension that shapes the kingdom, the awareness that their survival depends on delicate choices, on the ability to adapt, to negotiate, to endure. The people of Granada live with a sense of both pride and fragility, aware of the brilliance of their culture, aware of the uncertainty of their future in the Christian kingdoms. The 14th century is marked by its own struggles. The Black Death sweeps across Europe, leaving devastation in its wake. The population declines, the fields lie untended, the cities fall silent. The people live with fear, with grief, with uncertainty. The plague does not distinguish between Christian and Muslim. It moves across the land with indifferent force, touching every kingdom, every village, every family. The peninsula becomes a place of sorrow, of quiet mourning, of fragile hope. You drift through a Castilian village during the plague. The streets empty, the air heavy, the silence deep. The people gathered in small groups, their faces marked by fear and exhaustion, their prayers rising into the sky like fragile threads. The land feels still, suspended, waiting for the storm to pass. The Christian kingdoms, despite their growing power, are reminded of their vulnerability, reminded that no kingdom, no matter how strong, is immune to the forces of nature. The forces of time. Granada too suffers, its streets quieter, its markets subdued, its people grieving. Yet the kingdom endures, its culture remains vibrant, its architecture continues to grow, its scholars continue their work, its poets continue to write. The Alhambra continues to shine, a beacon of beauty in a world filled with uncertainty. The resilience of the people of Granada becomes one of the defining features of the century, their ability to endure hardship while preserving their identity, their art, their spirit. As the century progresses, the Christian kingdoms begin to recover, their populations slowly rising, their cities returning to life, their ambitions rekindled. Yet they also face internal conflicts, civil wars, disputes over succession, rivalries between nobles. The land is not unified, not harmonious, not free of struggle. The Reconquista is not a straight line, not a simple march southward, but a long, winding path shaped by countless forces, countless decisions, countless moments of chance. You walk through the kingdom of Portugal, its coastline rugged, its people shaped by the sea, their ships traveling to distant lands, their identity forming with each passing year, their rulers ambitious, their armies growing, their gaze turning southward, yet also westward, toward the ocean that stretches beyond the horizon. The 14th century becomes a time of exploration, a time of curiosity, a time where the world begins to feel larger, more mysterious, more filled with possibility and Aragon. The Mediterranean remains a central focus, the kingdom expanding its influence across the sea, its merchants trading with distant lands, its culture shaped by the movement of people, goods, and ideas. The Reconquista is only one part of their identity. one part of their ambition, one part of their story. The peninsula becomes a place where multiple worlds intersect, where the past and future blend in quiet. Complex Ways Granada remains the final Muslim kingdom in Iberia, its culture flourishing, its architecture reaching new heights, its diplomacy skillful, its people resilient. The Alhambra becomes a symbol of this resilience, a place where beauty and fragility coexist, a place where the spirit of Al-Andalus endures despite the shifting tides of history. The kingdom becomes a beacon of art, poetry, and knowledge, a final flowering of a civilization that has shaped the world in profound ways. You walk through the hall of the ambassadors, the ceiling rising like a night sky carved in wood, the walls adorned with intricate patterns that seem to shimmer in the dim light, the atmosphere serene, timeless, a place where the weight of history feels both heavy and gentle, a place where the past lingers in every stone, every carving, every whisper of water, the beauty of the place almost overwhelming, a reminder that even in the face of political decline, culture can reach extraordinary heights as the 14th century draws to a close. The peninsula stands in a delicate balance. The Christian kingdom strong but divided, Granada small but radiant, the land filled with tension, beauty, uncertainty, and quiet resilience. The story is far from over. The twilight continues. The land remembers every step, every voice, every dream, and you walk forward, guided by the soft pulse of time, into the next chapter of this long, drifting history, where the shadows deepen, the lights flicker, and the story of the Reconquista moves slowly toward its final centuries. You move now into the 15th century, a century where the peninsula enters its final twilight, a century where the long story of the Reconquista begins to gather its last threads, weaving them slowly, silently, into an ending that no one living at the time can fully see. The people of the century do not know they stand at the edge of a turning point. They do not feel the weight of 800 years behind them. They simply live within the quiet rhythm of their days, unaware that history is preparing to close a chapter older than memory itself. Granada remains the last Muslim kingdom in Iberia, a small but radiant world nestled between mountains and sky, its beauty unmatched, its culture refined, its spirit resilient. The Alhambra rises above the valley like a dream carved in stone, its walls shimmering with patterns that seem to breathe, its courtyards filled with the sound of water flowing through marble channels, its gardens blooming with roses and pomegranates, the scent of jasmine drifting through the air, the city below alive with markets, workshops, and the soft murmur of daily life. You drift through the Al Basin, the old quarter of Granada, its narrow streets winding like threads through the hillside, the whitewashed houses glowing in the sunlight, the sound of children playing echoing between the walls, the scent of bread and spices drifting from open windows, the atmosphere warm, intimate, filled with the quiet resilience of a people who have endured centuries of change, their identity shaped by beauty, by knowledge, by the soft pulse of a culture that has survived against all odds. The Nasrid dynasty rules Granada with a mixture of diplomacy, caution, and artistry, their kingdom small, their resources limited, yet their culture flourishing, their architecture reaching new heights, their scholars continuing their work, their poets writing verses that shimmer like water, their artisans crafting patterns that seem to dissolve into light. The Alhambra becomes the heart of this world, a palace of breathtaking elegance, a testament to the enduring spirit of Al-Andalus, a final flowering of a civilization that has shaped the world with its knowledge, its art, its architecture, its soul. In the north, the Christian kingdoms grow stronger, more unified, more determined. Castile and Aragon, once separate realms with their own ambitions, their own rivalries, their own identities, now move toward union through the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. A union that brings together two powerful kingdoms. A union that reshapes the political landscape of the peninsula. A union that creates a force capable of challenging even the most resilient of kingdoms. You walk through the courts of Castile, the stone halls lit by torches, the air filled with the scent of wax and wool, the nobles speaking in low voices, their discussions focused on the future, on the possibilities that lie ahead, on the idea of a unified realm stretching across the peninsula, their ambitions shaped by centuries of endurance, centuries of struggle, centuries of identity forged in the shadow of the powerful South. They do not speak of hatred, they speak of destiny, of unity, of reclaiming a world they believe was once theirs in Aragon. The Mediterranean breeze carries the scent of salt and citrus. The people shaped by the sea, their ships traveling across the waves, their merchants trading with distant lands, their culture influenced by the world beyond Iberia, their ambitions extending not only southward, but eastward, toward the islands and coasts of the Mediterranean. Yet the union with Castile shifts their focus, drawing their attention toward the final Muslim kingdom, toward Granada, toward the last piece of the peninsula, not under their control Granada, aware of the growing strength of the Christian kingdoms, continues its delicate diplomacy, paying tribute, forming alliances, navigating the shifting politics of the peninsula with remarkable skill. The Nasrid rulers understand that their survival depends not on military might, but on negotiation, on adaptation, on the ability to endure. Their kingdom becomes a place of beauty and fragility, a place where culture flourishes even as political pressure grows, a place where the people live with a sense of both pride and uncertainty, walk through the halls of the Alhambra at night, the moonlight casting soft shadows across the walls, the fountains reflecting the stars, the air cool and still, the beauty of the place almost overwhelming, yet beneath the serenity, you sense the quiet tension that shapes the kingdom, the awareness that the world is changing, that the balance of the peninsula is shifting, that the future is uncertain. The people of Granada live with a sense of both hope and fear, aware of the brilliance of their culture, aware of the fragility of their position in the Christian kingdoms. The 15th century becomes a century of consolidation, a century where the union of Castile and Aragon creates a new power, a power capable of shaping the future of the peninsula. Their armies grow stronger, their resources expand, their ambitions sharpen. The idea of completing the Reconquista, an idea that once felt distant, now feels possible. The rulers speak of unity, of destiny, of bringing the peninsula under one crown. Their worldview shaped by centuries of endurance, centuries of struggle, centuries of identity forged in the mountains and plains of the north. You drift through the countryside of Castile, the fields stretching wide beneath the sun, the wind moving gently across the grain. The village is quiet, the people living simple lives, unaware of the vast arc of history unfolding around them, unaware that their world is on the brink of transformation, unaware that the final chapter of a centuries-long story is beginning to take shape. They tend their fields, care for their families, pray in their churches, their lives shaped by the rhythm of the land, not by the ambitions of King's Granada. Despite its beauty, despite its culture, despite its resilience, begins to feel the pressure of the century. Internal divisions weaken the Nasrid dynasty. Rival factions vie for power. Disputes over succession create instability. The unity that once held the kingdom together begins to tremble, not with sudden collapse, but with the quiet unraveling that comes when leaders disagree, when loyalties shift. When the world changes faster than a kingdom can adapt, to walk through the streets of Granada during these years. The market's still lively, the artisans still at work, the scholars still writing, the poets still reciting verses in the courtyards. Yet beneath the surface, you sense the tension, the uncertainty, the quiet fear that the future may bring changes they cannot prevent. The people continue their daily lives, unaware that their kingdom, their culture, their world is entering its final decades in 1482. The conflict begins, not with a single moment, but with a series of small events, disputes, provocations, misunderstandings. The fragile balance between Granada and the Christian kingdoms breaks. The armies of Castile and Aragon move southward, their banners rising like waves of color against the sky, their soldiers marching with steady determination, their leaders aware that this moment may shape the future of the peninsula, aware that the long twilight of the Reconquista is entering its final chapter. Granada resists, its defenses strong, its people resilient, its mountains steep and protective. The war that follows is long, slow, and filled with moments of both hope and despair. The Christian armies capture towns and fortresses one by one, their progress steady, deliberate, shaped by the slow turning of time, and Nasrid rulers negotiate, resist, retreat, their kingdom shrinking, their options narrowing, their future uncertain. You drift through the mountains surrounding Granada, the air cool and sharp, the peaks rising like ancient guardians, the valleys filled with the sound of distant rivers, the land beautiful, timeless, indifferent to the struggles of kingdoms, indifferent to the ambitions of rulers, indifferent to the shifting borders drawn by human hands. The land endures, the mountains stand, the rivers flow. The story continues as the 15th century draws to a close. Granada stands alone, surrounded, its people weary, its rulers divided, its future fragile, yet its beauty remains. Its culture endures, its spirit unbroken. The Alhambra still glows in the sunlight. Its walls still shimmer with patterns that seem to breathe. Its courtyards still echo with the sound of water. Its gardens still bloom with roses and pomegranates. The kingdom remains a beacon of art, poetry, and knowledge, a final echo of a world that once stretched across the entire peninsula. And you walk forward, guided by the soft pulse of time, into the final chapter of this long, drifting history, where the shadows deepen, the lights flicker, and the story of the Reconquista moves slowly, silently, toward its end. You move now into the final years of the 15th century, the last breaths of a story that has drifted across nearly 800 years. A story older than memory, older than the lives of every soul who ever walked its path. A story that began long before anyone living could remember, and now approaches its quiet, inevitable end. The people of this time do not know they stand at the edge of a turning point. They do not feel the weight of centuries behind them. They simply live within the soft rhythm of their days, unaware that history is preparing to close a chapter that has shaped the land for generations. Beyond counting, Granada stands alone, the last Muslim kingdom in Iberia, a world of beauty and fragility, a world carved into the mountains, a world where the Alhambra rises like a dream above the valley, its walls shimmering with patterns that seem to breathe, its courtyards filled with the sound of water flowing through marble channels, its gardens blooming with roses and pomegranates, the scent of jasmine drifting through the air, the city below alive with markets, workshops, and the soft murmur of daily life. A final echo of Al-Andalus, a final refuge of a civilization that once stretched across the entire peninsula. You drift through the Albasan at dawn, the sky pale and quiet, the houses glowing softly in the early light, the narrow streets winding like threads through the hillside, the sound of distant footsteps echoing between the walls, the scent of bread rising from small kitchens, the atmosphere gentle, intimate, filled with the quiet resilience of a people who have endured centuries of change, their identity shaped by beauty, by knowledge, by the soft pulse of a culture that has survived against all odds, but the world around them has changed. The Christian kingdoms of Castile and Aragon have united under Ferdinand and Isabella. Their armies strong, their resources vast, their ambitions sharpened by the belief that they are completing a destiny shaped by centuries of endurance. Centuries of struggle, centuries of identity forged in the mountains and plains of the north. They do not speak of hatred, they speak of unity, of purpose, of bringing the peninsula under one crown. Their worldview shaped by the long twilight of the Reconquista. A twilight now approaching its final dawn, the war for Granada begins slowly, quietly, with small skirmishes, with negotiations that falter, with alliances that shift. The Nasrid dynasty divided by internal rivalries, their unity fragile, their future uncertain. The Christian armies move southward with steady determination, capturing towns and fortresses one by one, their progress deliberate, shaped by the slow turning of time. The mountains that once protected Granada now become the stage for a long, exhausting struggle, a struggle that wears down both sides, a struggle that feels endless to those who live through it. You walk through the mountains surrounding Granada, the air cool and sharp, the peaks rising like ancient guardians, the valleys filled with the sound of distant rivers, the land beautiful, timeless, indifferent to the struggles of kingdoms, indifferent to the ambitions of rulers, indifferent to the shifting borders drawn by human hands. The land endures, the mountains stand, the rivers flow. The story continues, even as the people who walk these paths feel the weight of uncertainty pressing against their hearts. Inside Granada, life continues with a strange mixture of normalcy and fear. The market's still open, the artisans still at work, the scholars still writing, the poets still reciting verses in the courtyards. Yet beneath the surface, you sense the tension, the quiet worry, the awareness that the world is changing, that the balance of the peninsula is shifting, that the future is fragile. The people live with a sense of both pride and sorrow, aware of the brilliance of their culture, aware of the uncertainty of their fate. You walk through the Alhambra during these final years, the light filtering through carved screens, the walls shimmering with geometric patterns that seem to dissolve into air, the fountains reflecting the sky, the atmosphere serene, timeless, a place where the soul feels both grounded and lifted. Yet beneath the beauty, you sense the quiet ache of a world that knows it is nearing its end. The palace remains a masterpiece, a testament to centuries of art, knowledge, and devotion, a final flowering of Al-Andalus, a final echo of a civilization that has shaped the world in profound ways. The Christian armies tighten their hold, their siege slow and methodical, their presence constant, their determination unwavering. The people of Granada endure hunger, fear, and exhaustion, their resilience remarkable, their spirit unbroken. Yet the pressure grows, the options narrow. The future closes in like a quiet, inevitable tide. The Nasrid ruler, Mohammed XII, known to history as Boabdil, faces impossible choices, choices shaped not by weakness, but by the weight of responsibility, the desire to protect his people, the hope of preserving what remains of their world. You stand on a hill overlooking the valley as the final negotiations unfold. The air still, the sky pale, the city below glowing softly in the fading light. The moment heavy with the weight of centuries. The end of a story that began long before anyone living could remember. The surrender of Granada is not marked by destruction, not marked by fire, not marked by cruelty. It is marked by negotiation, by dignity, by the quiet acceptance of a world changing, the terms agreed upon with care. The people promised safety, their homes protected, their culture respected, at least for a time. On January 2nd, 1492, the gates of Granada open. The Christian armies enter the city, their banners rising above the walls, their footsteps echoing through the streets. The people watch in silence, their faces marked by sorrow, by dignity, by the quiet strength of those who have endured centuries of change. The Alhambra is handed over, its beauty preserved, its walls untouched, its courtyard still filled with the sound of water. A moment both gentle and heartbreaking, the end of a world, the beginning of another. You walk beside Boabdil as he leaves the city, his small entourage moving slowly along the mountain path. The air cool, the sky pale, the city behind him glowing softly in the distance. He turns for one final look, the Alhambra rising above the valley, the mountains standing like ancient guardians, the world he knew fading into memory. The moment quiet, heavy, filled with the weight of loss, filled with the weight of centuries, filled with the weight of a story that has reached its end. The people of Granada remain, their culture enduring, their traditions carried forward, their identity preserved in memory, in language, in art, in the quiet resilience of generations. The end of Muslim rule in Iberia does not erase the brilliance of Al-Andalus. It does not erase the knowledge, the architecture, the poetry, the science, the spirit that shaped the world. The legacy of Al-Andalus continues, woven into the fabric of Spain, woven into the fabric of Europe, woven into the fabric of human history. You drift through the Alhambra one last time, the light soft, the air still, the fountains whispering their eternal song, the walls shimmering with patterns that seem to breathe, the atmosphere serene, timeless, filled with the echoes of centuries. The palace stands as a reminder that beauty endures, that knowledge endures, that culture endures, even when kingdoms fall, even when borders shift, even when the world changes beyond recognition. The Reconquista ends not with triumph, not with celebration, but with a quiet exhale, a long story closing its final page, a story shaped by countless lives, countless choices, countless moments of hope and fear, a story where no one living could see its beginning and no one living could see its end, a story carried forward by the slow, unending rhythm of time. You stand now in the silence that follows, the land calm, the mountains still, the rivers flowing gently toward the sea, the past settling like dust upon the earth, the future stretching out like a quiet horizon, the story complete, yet never truly finished. For history lives on in memory, in stone, in the soft whisper of the wind moving through the valleys of a land that has seen centuries rise and fall. And as you breathe in the quiet of this moment, you feel the truth that all long histories share, that we are brief travelers in stories far older than ourselves. That time moves with a patience beyond understanding, that generations rise and fall like waves, leaving behind only echoes, only traces, only the soft imprint of their footsteps upon the earth. The night settles gently around you. The story of the Reconquista, fading into the quiet, the land resting, the past at peace. And you drift into sleep, carried by the soft pulse of time, the soft breath of history, the soft whisper of a world that has finally come to rest. And now, as the long story of the Reconquista settles into silence, you find yourself drifting in the quiet that follows, the land resting beneath a sky that has watched centuries rise and fall, the mountains standing unchanged, the rivers flowing with the same patient rhythm they have always known, the echoes of 800 years fading into the soft breath of the night. You feel the weight of time loosening around you, like a cloak slipping from your shoulders. The memories of kingdoms, battles, cities, and generations dissolving into a gentle haze. The story no longer sharp, no longer heavy, but softened, blurred, carried away by the slow wind that moves across the peninsula. A wind that has touched every life, every stone, every dream you breathe in, slowly, deeply, letting the quiet settle into your chest, letting the calm spread through your body, letting the night wrap itself around you like a warm, Familiar blanket, the world outside dimming, the noise fading, the thoughts drifting like leaves on a still river. The land of Iberia rests now, its long twilight complete, its centuries of shifting borders and changing rulers folded neatly into the pages of history. The voices of Al-Andalus lingering like distant music, soft and beautiful. The voices of the northern kingdoms fading into the same gentle silence. All of them now part of a story that belongs not to one people, not to one faith, but to time itself. You walk once more through the Alhambra in your mind, the arches rising like waves, the patterns shimmering with quiet light, the fountains whispering their eternal song, the gardens breathing with the scent of jasmine and cypress, the walls warm beneath your fingertips, the air still and soft, the palace glowing like a memory that refuses to fade, a reminder that beauty endures, even when kingdoms fall, even when centuries pass, even when the world changes beyond recognition. You drift through Córdoba, through Seville, through Toledo, through the mountains of Asturias and the plains of Castile, the cities and landscapes blending into one another, their edges softening, their colors fading into twilight, the people who live there long gone, their footsteps erased, their voices quiet, yet their presence lingering in the stones, in the rivers, in the wind that moves gently across the land. You feel the truth that time carries everything forward, gently, patiently, without hurry, without pause. Every generation rising like a wave, shining for a moment, then falling back into the sea of memory, leaving behind only traces, only whispers, only the faintest imprint of their existence. And you feel yourself becoming part of that same rhythm, that same quiet flow, that same soft, unending movement. The night deepens around you, the air growing still, the world growing quiet, the story settling into its final rest, the last echoes fading into the darkness, the land breathing slowly, peacefully, as if relieved to finally sleep after so many centuries of change. You breathe with it, your chest rising and falling in the same slow rhythm, your thoughts drifting like mist across a calm valley, your body sinking deeper into rest, your mind softening, loosening, letting go. The story now a distant hum, a gentle vibration, a warm presence fading into the background. You feel the softness of the moment, the weightlessness of the night, the calm that settles into your bones, the quiet that wraps around your thoughts, the peace that fills the space where the story once lived, a peace that feels ancient, deep, and comforting. The Reconquista, with all its complexity, all its beauty, all its sorrow, all its shifting tides, now rests in silence. The land at peace, the past at peace, the night at peace. And you too begin to drift into that same stillness, that same quiet, that same soft, endless calm. You are safe here, in the quiet of the night, in the gentle breath of history, in the soft embrace of time. Nothing pulls at you. Nothing demands your attention. Nothing asks you to remember, to think, to hold on. You can let everything go. You can let yourself drift. You can let the story fade into the darkness like a distant star slipping below the horizon. Your breath slows. Your thoughts soften. Your body grows heavy and warm. The world around you dissolves into a gentle blur. The night deepens, the silence thickens, and you feel yourself sinking into a calm that feels endless, soft, and safe. The story has ended. The night continues, and you drift slowly, quietly, peacefully into sleep, carried by the soft pulse of time, the soft breath of history, the soft whisper of a world that has finally come to rest.